Good afternoon and welcome to a very special Liberal Judaism in Conversation. Some of you may have been seen in the media over the last week that liberal Jewish rabbis have made a change to their policy that will allow mixed faith couples to receive a blessing, in some cases under a chuppah. Today, I am joined in our Liberal Judaism studio by four of our rabbis of Liberal Judaism to discuss the topic, the significance, why they think it's important, and what the change will mean to them. First in our studio, I'm delighted to welcome Rabbi Danny Rich, former Chief Executive and Senior Rabbi of Liberal Judaism, and a community rabbi with years of experience that has always said that the community was at the heart of his rabbinate. Joining him is Rabbi Rebecca Birk of Finchley Progressive Synagogue, who is a very experienced community rabbi in the heart of Finchley and is also the incoming chair of the Conference for Liberal Rabbis and Cantors. Alongside Rebecca is our current chair of a rabbinic conference of rabbis and cantors, Rabbi Aaron Goldstein. He's the senior rabbi of Northwood Pinner Liberal Synagogue, and again, a rabbi much known to many of our families as officiating at their ceremonies of life cycle of all natures. And new perhaps to the liberal rabbinate, but certainly not new to our liberal Jewish community, is Rabbi Anna Posner, currently the Liberal Judaism chaplain for students, playing a really important role guiding our students at the moment, but also a community rabbi to BKY in London and also to Norwich Liberal. So it's a delight to have all of you with us. Thank you for giving up your Sunday afternoon to, especially in this very, very busy time as we come to the end of our Hagim period, our festival period. But a really important topic, and one which I know many of our congregants have been discussing, but not just our congregants, many as well, both outside and inside the Jewish community. Danny, I want to come to you first, really. You drove this change, both in terms of bringing it to Rabbinic Conference, but also providing for Rabbinic Conference the education materials, some of the anecdotes, and also your own reasons as to why this was an important change. Maybe you can explain for people listening exactly what is the change and why was it so important to you?
Yes, thank you, Charlie. Well, first of all, let me say I think the change is long overdue and one that I've supported and advocated for a very long time. And it seems to me very simple. If we want to encourage Jewish families to lead Jewish lives, and those families will include partnerships where one is a Jew and one doesn't identify as a Jew, may identify as something else, but where that family commits to, or that couple commits to maintaining a Jewish home, then it seems to me appropriate that, since we've all previously agreed, the conference previously agreed that it would be willing to bless, if that's the right term, it's not a term I would want to use, but participate in some celebration of that partnership. The fact that we can now do it under chuppah seems to be both common sense, logical, compassionate, open, inclusive, all the things that we would expect of liberal rabbis. But when we say that the chuppah, which itself, of course, has undergone change in Jewish history, historical circumstances, but the chuppah is a symbol of a Jewish home. And we, at the rabbi's discretion and at the couple's desire to maintain a Jewish home, and they're giving that indication, I can see no logical compassion. I can see no reason at all why any person could object to a couple having a chuppah where they agree to maintain a Jewish home. By the way, it's what a number of both our friends and our enemies thought we already did, but in fact we haven't done it until this resolution of the Conference of Rabbis and Cantors a few weeks ago.
So, Danny, just a follow-up question there, maybe, which was something I was asked this morning, and I know my own reason for it, but why is the time particularly pertinent now? Why do you feel this is the moment?
Well, I've already indicated to you that I think the moment was overdue, but I've always taken the view that Judaism has long ceased to be a tribal way of life, and its raison d'etre is to provide beauty and opportunity and Judaism to as many people as are prepared to take it up. And we know from our pastoral experience, there are many, let's call them for a moment, because I can't think of a better term, non-Jewish partners, husbands and wives, who are doing so much to maintain Judaism in their own homes, to bring up Jewish families, indeed to stand guard outside our synagogues, to do so much in our community, I can think of no good reason why we would seek to deprive them. If a couple comes and says, we wish to have our marriage blessed, if that's the right term, it's not the term I prefer, but one, under a chuppah, under a symbol of a Jewish home, we're committing to a Jewish home, we're committing to a Jewish life, we're committing to Jewish children, I can think of no good reason why we would refuse to do so. If you say why now, well, life has become much more complicated, much more multi-identity, if I can use that term. And it seems to me that there's nothing wrong with being, Jews fall in love with people who are not Jewish. It's not incompatible with Judaism, unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, to fall in love with somebody who's not Jewish. And the question is, how is the rabbi in the community to support couples in that situation? And how are they to do their best with that couple to promote Jewish homes, to promote Judaism, and to encourage the next generation, Jewish and non-Jewish, to see Judaism as a positive force in the world at large and in that particular couple's life.
Thank you, Danny. And that's a great spring point to you, Aaron. You are the lead for Kolrak, the chair of Kolrak, the Conference of Liberal Rabbis and Cantors, but you're also a rabbi, and you are also the rabbi of a large liberal congregation. I wonder whether you can tell us a little bit about what you see as the significance being for liberal Jewish congregations.
I'd especially like to spring off the word that Danny was unkeen to use, which is blessing. I don't think that our understanding of our religion is that we bless, as in the cantors or rabbis, but I think what we do is to ask God to bless. And I think that's a very significant part of our decision. We do want people to feel that they have been blessed by God, that this moment is sacred, sanctified, just for a secular word, special in a way that we can't normally describe. This moment for two Jewish people standing under a chuppah, as we understand it, with God, almost feeling like there is some kind of presence, has been so powerful for couples through millennia. And to deny that for a couple who are going to have a Jewish home or already have a Jewish home, who are going to be raising Jewish children, who are going to be enjoying worshipping God, enjoying studying, enjoying socializing within a Jewish community. That blessing is palpable. It is such an important moment, life cycle moment. I'm proud that we are now able to offer that to a couple who are committing to that Jewish home and that Jewish life within our communities. Mixed couples have enriched our communities. Both the Jewish person and the non-Jewish person bring to our community skills, knowledge, a way of looking at the world, which has brought all of us a breath of fresh air.
And thank you, Aaron. I this morning, some of you may have heard on Radio 4, the chair of Liberal Judaism, Ruth Seeger, and her husband talk about how much it would have meant to them and how much the opportunity now to have a blessing under the chuppah will mean to them. Are there couples that you've had in your own experience that you now look back on and you think, I wish I could have given them to them this ritual, or couples that you see coming up that you think, I'm really looking forward to being able to bless, as you use, bless them in this moment?
For me, it's an easy one. Going back for the first family who I babysat for, the couple, she's Jewish, he isn't Jewish, 3 kids who went all the way through LJY Netzer, or Altsnik as it was. Such an incredibly supportive Jewish family within our community. I would love to be able to now go back and to say to them, as I'm saying to lots of people as I'm talking, people are saying, wow, this is incredible. I wish this was available. Well, okay, well, let's do a renewal of vows. Let's do something now under a chuppah, if that is what you want. And let us acknowledge the life that you have chosen to live. And then in my own family, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, Wendy, my sister-in-law, who is Jewish, and Matt, who does not have a religious bone in his body, but who, if I go over on a Friday night to drop in to wish them Shabbat Shalom on my way back from shul, if Wendy's not there, he's the one who's making kiddush with the kids. He's the one who is ensuring that there is a Jewish home. And if they want to, I'd be delighted and honoured to have a ceremony at some point in time under a chuppah with them.
Thank you, Aaron. And one of the beauties, I can see how much your face lights up talking about this, but I also know that one of the things that you're very passionate about with Liberal Judaism is the fact that we embrace many different voices. And one of the important points about this policy has been very much about this being open to rabbinic discretion, to those conversations with couple, and also about being able to say, possibly there's a difference between, or definitely there's a difference between a wedding under a chuppah between two Jews, at which legally we're also allowed to officiate, and a blessing under a chuppah for a mixed faith couple or other rituals. And Rebecca, I'd love to come to you now to explore this a little bit, both your opinion, but also your experience as a community rabbi who I know people's ritual experiences sit at the heart of your rabbinate.
Yes, definitely. Thanks, Charlie. Really good to be here today. And the first thing that I would want to say is that Liberal Judaism has so much to be proud of. And we congregational rabbis look to Liberal Judaism to be continually wrestling and considering progress in the areas of ritual, learning, Jewish status. So this is altogether a great move that we are each generation considering new parts of Jewish life. Finchley Progressive Synagogue, where I serve, we are really fortunate and benefit hugely from the fact that a huge percentage of our families are mixed families. And as Aaron says, we rely heavily on that participation, contribution, support of those mixed families. And I can't imagine what we would be as a congregation without that. And we honour all with full membership wherever they are or however they come together as a family. For me, participating in mixed faith wedding blessings as well as Jewish weddings has been a highlight of my career. I think rites of passage and marking Jewish ritual is one of the best bits of being a rabbi, definitely, and I'm sure I'm not alone. I think something that I'm quite interested in is that there is a distinction, and sometimes it's great to draw that distinction. And I was just reminded on Simchat Torah yesterday and over the weekend of lahavdil, of the expression of separation and distinction between night and day, between all sorts of things in the description of creation. And I am a great believer that sometimes to distinguish can bring honor and joy and beauty and blessing. So I can think of several couples that probably wanted to create a Jewish home and absolutely have gone on to do that. I have families in my congregation that I was involved with weddings and now baby blessings. And soon, although I hope not so soon, thinking about my age, there will be bar bat mitzvahs. Let's not even look further than that. But I have also found that those couples that are being welcomed within our community, that have a ceremony that I luxuriate on the details and love and concern for in the same way I would if we were using a chuppah. And indeed, I'll find alternative ways to make that wedding ceremony feel as bona fide, as drawing in, as building on the foundations of a Jewish home as I would with a chuppah for a full Jewish marriage. So right now, I'm really intrigued to see, I have 3 marriages in the pipeline that are all COVID marriages that have been delayed. And it's going to be really interesting working with the couples as to how will we take advantage of this? I see it very much as being a shared decision-making process. For me, once I'm in the situation of marrying a couple or doing any kind of ceremony, I think a lot of what happens is really a collaborative process of making decisions together. So I am interested to see what's going to happen.
Thank you. I think such an interesting perspective, and there is a lot I'd like to hear more from you on particularly, but maybe just to pick up on 2 things that you said. One is about this sense of membership of a community, which is, I think it's really important for people to hear outside of that, whatever the ritual that you are able to create with your families, you are asking them to be members of your community.
Always. always. And that membership of a community does not mean that the Jewish half of a couple join. It means full membership. And indeed, we've done that now for several years. No longer that incredibly insulting label on the synagogue newsletter that would be addressed just to the Jewish member. We see it as a whole mixed family that are welcomed fully into the synagogue. So yes, that feels important, both in terms of commitment to the synagogue, but also in terms of the relationship that I, as their rabbi, would be having with them.
Thank you. I think that's a really important thing for people to hear, and actually in some ways possibly more radical. Even the chuppah makes a great story, but actually that idea of membership is potentially a more radical story than it's given credit to. So thank you for sharing that with us as well. And just lastly, before I really want to come on to Anna, who's waiting very patiently there, but just could you, for anybody who may not be involved in the intricacies of the difference between a Jewish wedding and a mixed faith blessing, just tell us some of the rituals that won't be involved in a marriage blessing. What are the things that perhaps do provide that lahavdil, that separation between a Jewish wedding and a marriage blessing?
So certainly the betrothal blessing and the formula, the Hebrew formula of the exchange of rings, the traditional one, I would definitely always offer alternatives, and sometimes they're even more beautiful, the alternatives. But I think the couples that I come into contact with really care about integrity as well as something full of beauty and symbolism. And I think walking that balance. So I love to use the marriage blessings. We often use alternative translations and offer them in different ways. But I see no reason why the symbolic idea of 7 wedding blessings should not be shared by everyone. Sometimes the formula and the Hebrew might be slightly different, but I haven't generally used a ketubah for mixed faith wedding blessings, but sometimes we'll come up with alternative contracts and commitments that articulate or express the vows and the commitments and promises and dedication that the couple are wanting to share. So there are ways of really using so many of our symbols and structures in creative ways.
Thank you. So I think we're beginning to get a flavour of the real creativity that all of our rabbis really put into creating meaningful ritual for our families, whatever shape and forms they take up. But Anna, you have grown up in Liberal Judaism, really, truly, and now a rabbi of the movement, leading 2 of our communities, but also being a massive part of our students' lives as well. And for those people who saw recently from the story in the national press, there are a couple that actually you're going to be officiating at their wedding. And I wonder whether you could tell us a little bit about that wedding and why you were so pleased that this practice was changed, that you were able to bring this ritual for them.
Yes, of course. So it's Helen also grew up in the Liberal movement. It's Helen and Lucy. Helen grew up in the Liberal movement. She was a member of LJY since she was 7, I think it was, and was a movement worker, and has a partner who happens not to be Jewish, but is fully involved in her Jewish life, and they do Jewish rituals together. So when we had the initial conversation about kind of what their wedding would look like, what their lives are like at the moment, and we started the beginning of that process of looking at what might be possible for them to have as a wedding blessing. We kind of went through all the things, and then they brought up the chuppah, and both of them loved the idea of having a chuppah representing their Jewish home. And it hurt to have to say, actually, you're in, but you're not in enough for me to be able to do a chuppah for you. And they seemed quite surprised by that, because Liberal Judaism is so inclusive that it will involve the non-Jewish partner, fully, like Rebecca said, in the community. And often both partners are full members of a community and certainly fully involved in a community. And this is something that both of them wanted. And it didn't seem right. It didn't seem inclusive to have to say no for that. So I'm delighted that about this decision, that for a couple like them who really are building a Jewish home together, and we're able to represent that in just one symbol of their wedding blessing.
Thank you, Anna. And I wonder whether you think that this should go further, whether there are more things that you think that if you were to predict when you're perhaps let's say Danny, so we don't insult the rest of us about age, but let's say towards when you're the stateswoman of the liberal rabbis, are there things that you would hope that by then maybe had also been included in these inventions?
So it's a good question. And so in the States, in the Reform movement in the States, a lot of rabbis will do a full wedding with a chuppah, with sheva brachot, with kiddushin, even the traditional wedding vows, and even with a ketubah. I think that, I don't know if we'll get there. I don't know if we should get there. I don't know. I think that there needs to be a lot of learning about what each part of a wedding ceremony represents. And through that learning, we'll be able to understand what fits best for our community. I think that the chuppah is a symbol of a Jewish home and a life that people bring together. And I think that while in a mixed faith or a mixed couple, there are often many ideologies. In any couple, there's often many ideologies and many beliefs that come together. I think that symbol of a Jewish home that they want to build together is something that makes perfect sense at this stage.
Thank you, Anna. And to bring that question really to you, Aaron, Anna mentioned learning and study, and I wonder whether you think that that will be part of what you will offer to couples at this point. Will be some learning about what the chuppah is and why that might be an important part of their ceremony, or not, as the case may be.
It's a fantastic opportunity to learn and study, and the interesting thing is I've been doing that all the way through with mixed couples. It's not a question of when it will start now. I do that all the way through. The question is, we sometimes get a bit lazy, and I think Jewish couples get a little bit lazy when they just assume, oh, that's what we're going to have because they're two Jews. And they actually don't do so much thinking about the ceremony. And sometimes we can get a bit lazy with it as well. So this is a really good opportunity to prompt us, to remind us about how important it is to actually create a ceremony with a couple, to be able to make it very personal to them, to be able to make it appropriate. Because, again, we're not saying we are going to use a chuppah for every couple. It's not necessarily going to always be that case. In fact, I did a wedding for two Jews this summer without a chuppah, because in their situation, it wasn't something that they could actually follow through with integrity. Two people who are very, very, very secular. Remember what I said about God blessing, asking God to bless. That bit of it just didn't come into their wedding. It's two Jews getting married. So I think there's a great opportunity for us to consider ceremonies with integrity, ceremonies which are appropriate for the couple. And this really gives us an opportunity to bring a symbol into ceremonies for couples where in the past I really wished I had been able to go there. We do move. You asked the question of Anna, which I thought was a little bit mean, about what it would be when she's the statesperson of Liberal Judaism, which I'm sure she will be in the future. 10 years ago, something like that, when we last talked about this, I wasn't there in terms of using a chuppah. And things do change, and communities change at different paces. And at different moments in time as well. We change at different times as well. And I think this is a journey that all of us as colleagues are going on together, supporting each other on that journey, respecting those colleagues who may not want to also use a chuppah. This happened in the past when we introduced mixed faith blessings to start with. Some of our colleagues did not do the ceremonies. And we've still got along very well as a conference, and we will do again in the future. I think it allows us the opportunity with couples to work with couples, and that's the most important conversations we can have.
So that's really helpful, Aaron, I think on many levels. And Anna, I'm very sorry if I was mean, but I knew that you had an answer to that. And so it was really important to hear your voice on that. But to come back a step, which, Aaron, you flagged the fact that as a liberal rabbinate, we're able to hold those differences. But Danny, do you think that this will create more differences between the progressive, or the liberals in this case specifically, and the rest of the Jewish community? And do you think that or do you think that this is just the beginning of other movements perhaps following step?
Well, we know that where Liberal Judaism leads, the Reform movement follows, and then Masorti and others come after us. So we know that on all sorts of things. But I think that's the issue. The issue is about how we provide leadership. And leadership is about two things. Sometimes it's about leading from the front, but every leader knows if you run too far ahead and all the people can see is the dust on your heels, they soon leave you behind, or you leave them behind. So part of our leadership is about showing leadership and creating opportunities. It's also about taking your people with you. There is no point being a leader out the front when your people are not with you. So part of the balance we have to, all liberal rabbis have to take, and liberal Judaism has to make, is leadership in the sense of being pioneering and ahead of things, and at the same time taking people with us. We don't seek to alienate people in any way whatsoever. We seek to offer opportunities, and we seek to lead where that's appropriate. And listen, I'm not in national leadership in the way that I was, so it's no longer so important, particularly relevant to me. I would hope that the Reform movement would see the sense in this. I would hope that other people would see the sense in it. The long-term question for Judaism, as far as I'm concerned, for liberal Judaism, is: will we be a museum piece? Will we be a minority tribal way of life, or can we offer, which is what I want to do, and liberal Judaism offers it for me and for my family with all its mixtures, a decent, godly, historic way of life. And that's what I'm about.
Thank you, Danny. And I think, Aaron, you'd like to maybe add something to that.
Just quickly, I think that I see what liberal Judaism does as part of the rainbow of opportunities that Judaism provides. The misnomer is that there was always one kind of Judaism and it was monolithic and everybody did exactly the same. It's never like that. So I'm not saying that what we are doing is the right thing. I'm saying it's the right thing for us and for the people for whom it's relevant. It's not saying that what they do is wrong. It's just different. And I think that's very important. We're not in competition with each other. I think we're enriching Judaism by introducing and leading in the way that Danny talks about. But it's not against other people. It's actually for other people. It's for Judaism and the development of it.
Thank you. And we did have a question come in, which was about, first of all, thanking Anna for acknowledging that there had been hurt in the past when these, when people had asked for a chuppah as part of their blessing and had been told, actually, this is not something that we do. Does anybody have a sense of how they feel we can go about repairing if there is hurt, or consoling those people who feel like maybe it's come too late for them? Rebecca, please.
Yeah. I was really moved by that question, actually, and that recognition that for each step we make in liberal Judaism, there is pain and disappointment about what's come before and what has potentially excluded. I think, I would really hope that Jacob's rabbi and his connection with his rabbi helps in that respect. But I think for me, I also think that we all have come from one family. And I know sometimes it feels, I always think of wonderful John Rayner, Rabbi John Rayner, Zichrono Livracha, and that Achilles heel that we have of Klal Yisrael, of being concerned to be part of the family of Israel, but not to allow it to inhibit progress, movement, kindness, compassion in any way. But the fact is, changes have come about slowly. And whilst I have been a student rabbi and like Aaron, have seen those changes and have moved with my own integrity through them. And each time a change is made, it might take a while for everyone to get on board. And with that while, also there is an acknowledgement that yes, there is pain when you're not able to have what you feel is the most compassionate thing to give. But actually, I really, I respect the carefulness of our journey. And I don't know if this helps you, Jacob, at all, but I think by doing things carefully, thoughtfully, by not making any quick decisions or jumping, there is a sense that we are doing it fully with the right thoughtfulness attached to it. I think when that decision was made, and I need some help as to the year of when mixed faith ceremonies were brought in, I think maybe like the end of the 90s.
About 20 years ago now.
Right. So it was really radical for some. But for many of us, it also felt like, oh my gosh, we are welcoming mixed families, offering not just offering, but grabbing their children to raise them as Jews within our religion school. Of course, we need to be there at the wedding. My goodness, of course, we need to be there. But that doesn't mean it didn't take a few of us time to get there, to stand under that, to stand within that family with all the integrity that we could. So I suppose I would respectfully say that every change comes with great care, and change is good, but you have to change from something to change. And when we suddenly realized that we could, and with all the privilege and honor attached to be doing Brit Ahava, to be doing covenant ceremonies for same-sex couples, again, that we must look back on that and say, why didn't that happen 100 years ago? We know why it didn't. We also know why the legal requirements that our country, the United Kingdom, gave the legal right to synagogues to marry two Jews with a marriage secretary in order to make it simple and safe. So we had to work with that. I'm part of a group of women from all different denominations. And on last Sunday night, they said, are you going to be breaking the law? Because we thought it was only kosher for two Jews to be married by rabbis. And I said, no, we're not. We're doing ceremonies that will involve that. So there's always room for misunderstanding. There's always room for concern. Are they still within the Jewish family? Do we understand what's happening? So for me, I feel quite passionate about this and about the pace that we take to make changes.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I want to really draw attention to two things that you said. One is really important for people to understand the law, that the law is that Liberal Judaism has no intention of breaking that we are given, as Rebecca called it, the privilege and the responsibility to be able to marry two Jews. And so that doesn't change. We're not suggesting any breaking of the law. But the second thing that also I thought that you said that was about the emotion, about the personal investment that our rabbis make in these decisions, that it doesn't sound, when you talk about it, that it's that we are really thinking about people's relationships and the best way to hold those relationships. And so, Anna, to come to you, Rebecca talked quite movingly about how families can be part of communities, and you work with two very different communities as well as the chaplaincy. Whether to share with us a little bit about how families in all their shapes and forms are you try to include them in your communities?
100%. So I've only just started working in both communities. I know that in both communities we have many mixed faith couples in both Norwich and in BKY. And at this stage, I don't know who is the Jewish partner and who is not the Jewish partner, because I have not asked, and everyone's involved and it doesn't seem important. Sometimes that information is shared with me, but sometimes it isn't. And I know that in both communities, each person is treated as an individual, and indeed where there are children as well, each person in that unit is counted as an individual, as well as, of course, them being part of the family, and all of them together make up the community. And
thank you, Anna.
I know at this stage.
Yeah, but I think it's exactly indicative. I think that's why it's so important to hear. But this question of status, Aaron, maybe as the chair of Kolrak, I can come to you. It's sometimes the concern from outside of our community and inside of our community that numbers of people attending and joining synagogues is perhaps reducing, and that that innovations such as this will only add to that kind of weakening, that diluting of Judaism. I'm sure that's not something that you hold to, but I would like to, or our audience would like to hear how you feel about that.
Welcoming people into our communities is a wonderful opportunity for them to consider what Judaism is and what it means to them, that they can actually live a Jewish life without being Jewish within our communities, and to be able to understand that and to work out what it is that they want to pass on to subsequent generations as well. For me, one of the beauties of a mixed wedding blessing is the opportunity to speak to the non-Jewish family, to consider what and understand what is their background, what is their heritage, and how that can be applicable to the life that their son, daughter is going to lead within the Jewish community. And I think that's a very important element. We, of course, consider the Jewish partner and the Jewish community. We also need to think about those people who are not Jewish as well. What I have found is we very, very much enrich lives, lives which often were not lived within community necessarily, lives without necessarily a formal faith or narrative as we have in terms of our biblical Torah stories, ways to live our lives. And these conversations actually increase, I find, within mixed households as they grapple with living their lives within the Jewish community and trying to understand what is their Jewish home going to look, feel, sound and smell like. It's wonderful that we have so many of the people who are non-Jewish partners taking our Exploring Judaism classes, trying to understand better so that they can be a Jewish partner, a Jewish teacher for their children as well, even without actually being Jewish.
Thank you. And we've had a question come in about whether or not we have that they've heard us mention several times about this idea of creating a Jewish home. And do any of you hold that you have your own criteria for what it means to create a Jewish home in order that somebody maybe have a chuppah as part of their blessing? Is there anybody who would like to lead on that question for us?
Aaron, go ahead.
No, Rebecca, please.
Okay.
Please.
To me, you just know it isn't about whether someone is absolutely going to light candles every Friday night or say Kiddush, or that there are books with Hebrew in the home, or that they have considered if they're going to be blessed with children and want children, they'll raise them. I think you know whether they want this to be part of their wrestle and struggle with life or not. So I definitely have a few small criteria of trying to mark time Jewishly, and trying to have it present in some way in your life. But I think that's a great example of rabbinic discretion, is that things like that can't be written on a piece of paper. You just know. And yeah.
Thank you. And Aaron, did you want to add to that? And then I want to come to you, Danny, on something specific.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that quite similar to Rebecca, but it would be impossible for us to have a criteria with something as broad as Judaism. There are so many different ways that people express their Judaism, and to assume that it must be just a tick list of you must have this and that and whatever. My wife is a minimalist, so I'm not allowed too many books in my home. They're in my study at synagogue. And so there wouldn't be so many Jewish books in my home. There's other things that make it very, very Jewish. And a lot of that is what we do. And you can't see that as soon as you, without having conversations and talking with people. What these decisions provide are opportunities for us to speak and have conversations with people. It enriches us as colleagues and our better understanding of what a Jewish home is. And it also hopefully helps couples to be able to work out for themselves what it is that makes their home unique, special, and Jewish.
Thank you. We've had a lovely comment come in from Owen, one of the members of our board, pointing out the clarity with which people are speaking, which helps those at home who from our deaf community. So I'm really glad, Owen, that we're not speaking with our hands in front of our mouths and we're able to articulate what are really, really important points. But talking of clarity, Danny, you've mentioned a couple of times about this legal point over mixed marriages. I wonder, we've had a question at home asking if you could perhaps explain what that is that you are referring to.
Sure. I mean, at the moment, liberal rabbis, or it could be marriage secretaries, some rabbis are marriage secretaries, but liberal synagogues, like synagogues around the country, are able to officiate, are able to act for the state, if I can use that term, when the act says when two people who profess the Jewish faith get married. So currently, if somebody says they're Jewish and somebody says I'm not Jewish, come to us and say, can we do the legal part of your wedding? The answer is no, we can't. They have to have a registry office wedding first. I actually would prefer the continental system whereby couples go and register their willingness to be married and be a couple civilly in a town hall, and then they come to a rabbi or a priest or anybody else who then works out whatever ceremony they wish to have. But currently that's not the law. Currently the law, which a marriage law is complicated and is difficult to change, requires that both parties have to profess the Jewish faith. Now, that's never actually been tested, what professing the Jewish faith actually means, which is is probably a good thing, really. But currently, if somebody comes, in the case of the couple that whom I know well, Helen, and that Anna mentioned, Anna or the marriage secretary under which the synagogue they're being married in could not do the civil part because that's against the law. And Liberal Judaism, in accord with the principle Dinah Malchut Dinah, has always supported keeping the law. We don't break the law. We campaign to change the law. And I personally would be in favor of Liberal Judaism campaigning to actually simply say marriage registration and the legal part is done by, whether it's two Jews or one Jew and somebody else, is done by local authorities. And then two Jews or a Jew and somebody else can go to wherever they want and have whatever ceremony as such, religious or otherwise, cultural, traditional ceremony they wish to have. So I hope that's clarified it, Charlie.
Yes, I think that's really helpful. And I
Can I just add one other thing?
Sure, you can. I want to say one thing, commenting on what you said, though, which is that I think what's really important for people at home to understand is that Liberal Judaism constantly walks this line between pragmatism of dealing with the framework of the laws that are in front of them, but also expressed, I think, really beautifully by our rabbis today about the creativity of taking that and making something that is an official law into something special and something spiritual and something that is individual for the couple. So thank you. Yes, Danny.
I just want to make a point about rabbis qua rabbis, really, that of course marriage is between a couple primarily, and we rabbis, of course, are privileged to be able to assist and enhance and do all sorts of things around that. But we also, rabbis also sometimes have to say no to things that are asked for, and whilst I endorse entirely the point made by Jacob and Anna and Rebecca about the hurt of some of our previous decisions, I'm not prepared to say those decisions at the time they were made were the wrong ones. Rabbis are not always here to say, yes, you can have whatever you want. I mean, you can have whatever you want, but don't ask us to do it or endorse it. You know, we rabbis are leaders of our communities. We represent Judaism. We represent Liberal Judaism. We're part of our communities. We have legal responsibility. We have moral responsibility. We have religious responsibilities. And sometimes couples ask things of us, and well, people, not only couples, in all sorts of situations, ask unreasonable things of rabbis and things that rabbis can't do or don't want to do, or it's not in their conscience to do. And so whilst this is focused around rabbis, obviously, because we're talking about marriages and rabbis often are part of that, I do just want to remind those who are listening that we rabbis also have consciences and responsibilities and can't always say yes to everything that's asked of us in all sorts of spheres of life, including marriage and conversion and what you do with your children and what house you have and what color your mezuzah is or whatever.
Thank you, Danny. And actually, as always, you take us into really smoothly into our closing part of this panel. I want to ask all of you the same question, and that is, when people see this headline, what is it that you would like them to understand beneath it? So if that's the halakha, so to speak, what's the midrash that you would like to leave people with from today, from the headline? What should our congregants and people looking to Liberal Judaism go away and understand from this change? And Rebecca, I very unfairly like to come to you first.
Thank you. Thanks, Charlie. For me, I think that we rabbis and all of us within most denominations of Judaism, but I'm only concerned with ours right now, is to live a life of meaning and a life that matters. And that life of meaning is both about the work that we do in the wider community and tikkun olam and making the world a better place because of our Judaism. But I think equally it is the internal, more intimate choices and decisions that we make about living a life that matters with meaning, with these rites of passage that both demonstrate the traditional nature of the faith, community, people, civilization that we are a part of, but at the same time, the amazing contribution that modernity and contemporary life gives us as well, so that we are constantly holding that balance. I really want to reiterate what Danny said, that I think we would be damaging and negating Judaism if we were to say that everything goes all the time. And I think that's what I was trying to say about moving slowly and carefully. So for me, I think it's about living a life of meaning, and we rabbis responding to that desire for meaning, for inclusion, for love, for respect, for honor, but doing it within a Jewish context. And whilst we don't see ourselves as a halachic movement, we see ourselves deeply embedded in tradition with a reverence for the past. And I would hope to hold that balance.
Thank you. Beautiful thought. And Aaron. Oh, Aaron appears to have frozen from us for the moment. So Anna, if you don't mind, we'll come to you.
Yes, I hope that people see from the headline that we value our mixed faith couples as part of our Jewish family and as part of our Jewish home, and recognise that home that they're building together, and value that as part of their wedding blessing, where it feels appropriate to do so, and of course they want to do so.
Thank you, Anna. And Danny.
Well, I'm going to say something a bit different, which may sound a bit odd. But I want to say something about the rabbinate. Having just said this is all about the rabbinate, and I am physically the oldest here and have been ordained the longest. And I look at my four colleagues and friends, and I want to say how proud I am of them. I am most proud about the liberal rabbinate, not because it always makes the decision I want it to make. In fact, quite often I find myself out on a limb. It doesn't make the decision I want it to make. But the manner in which it goes about making its decisions, the thoughtfulness which it puts into preparation, the commitment it has to education, the desire it has for Jewish life, and the ability to walk the tightrope between being loyal to Judaism and responding to modernity makes me proud not only to call myself a liberal rabbi, but more importantly to say how proud I am as I look at Anna and Charlie and Rebecca and Aaron in different ways. We've been together doing all sorts of things through youth movements and through congregations and so on. I am wonderfully proud of our rabbinate and know that whatever the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years as Anna's a rabbi holds, I will know that my children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren will be in good hands if this is the caliber of the liberal rabbinate going forward.
Danny, I think there is not an awful lot that any of us can add to that other than to thank all of you for being with us, particularly my colleague for such eloquent and thoughtful answers to the questions posed. To those of you at home for being with us and joining us for really, I think, such an important conversation. And that really is for me what this move has meant, is about opening conversations. It's about welcoming people into our communities and being able to bring that conversation into their lives. Liberal Judaism obviously cannot continue without your kind support. So if you do feel moved to support us in our work and supporting our congregations, then please do feel free to head on over to our website and make a donation to Liberal Judaism, which will continue us to make sure that we are the home for everybody's Jewish story. Good afternoon. Hag Sameach. Have a very good week.